Welcome back, everyone, to the Vandermount Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Cano, a business and performance coach here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and it is my joy to have this conversation with you where we get to talk about the power of clarifying your offering. You know, clarifying your offering isn't just a practical exercise that every good business should do if they want to be a growing business. There's real power in communicating crystal clear exactly what it is that your business does. You know, whether it's a product or service and how it relates to the needs and the problems and the different questions that your clients are going to have. So we're going to continue this conversation in our series on clarifying your offering, whether that's a product or a service. And in our last podcast conversation, we talked about asking the powerful question of functionality, which is, how does your offering work really? And if you missed that conversation, you can go back and listen to the previous podcast. But in today's conversation, we're going to ask a second question to help us clarify even more what it is that we do, how it involves our clients, and how to make it more compelling for them to purchase what we have. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to motivate your clients to invest in your product or service if it's something that's going to help them solve a problem or meet a need. So in our last podcast, we talked about something that Tony Robbins often says about asking powerful questions, and that if you ask poor questions, you're going to get poor results. But if you ask powerful questions, you'll get powerful results. So we're going to continue asking those powerful questions to help our business be successful. And today we're going to ask the second question that's going to help us clarify our offering even more and hopefully help us reach more customers and increase our sales. So here's the question. I call this the process question, and the question is this: what is the process for someone buying what you offer? Or what does the process look like for somebody onboarding on your product or service? Now, in all of the business growth and financial planning tools and books that I've read and courses that I've taken, this is by far the number one reason why people don't buy from a business. Because if they don't feel empowered to purchase when they're ready, then they're not going to purchase. They're not going to buy your product or service. So we need to make the buying process as clear as possible for them. Last week, we talked about how our offering, whether it's a product or service, makes sense in our minds, but it doesn't always click for the customers that we're trying to reach. And we talked about how if we want to be successful, if we want to see revenue grow and see people purchase our product or service, then we have to spell out exactly what it is and how it works for our customers, because if it's not clear, they won't buy. So for many businesses, they assume that the customer already knows that they need to visit their website and complete a form, or that they think they already know that they need to visit a specific product page or subscribe to a specific tier in their subscription services, or go to a checkout card and go through the process of purchasing their product. But no matter what your onboarding process looks like, you have got to spell it out for your customers. You've got to spell it out. Otherwise, they're not going to buy from you. And again, this is one of the biggest mistakes that businesses make. They don't spell out exactly what steps the customer needs to take to successfully purchase the product or service and how they can actually get started. In fact, I want you to imagine that the onboarding process really is like a journey, okay? And it's a journey that you're responsible for walking with your customers through, because the fact is, no one is going to travel anywhere if they don't know where they're going to, or if they don't know how they're going to get there. If there's no clear route or no clear highway that they can follow, if there's no navigational system or GPS to direct them, then they're not going to go on that journey. They're afraid they're going to get lost, right? You wouldn't go on a journey if you didn't know how you were going to get there. If you wouldn't try to get somewhere, a specific destination, if you didn't know what road to take and what the process would look like. So our job as business owners is to clarify that journey for them and to show them how they can begin the onboarding process to purchase what it is that we offer. Now, one way to answer this question is by starting with the very first step you absolutely need your customer to take. Okay, so think about it. Think about what the onboarding process looks like. Think about what the buying process looks like, and ask yourself the question, what is the most critical action that my customer must take before anything else? The first and foremost step that they need to take in order to get the ball rolling to purchase what I have for them. Think about that for a second, okay? And whatever answer comes to your mind, here's what we're going to do. Once you come up with the answer, we're going to go through this exercise where we're going to keep asking the question, and then what? Okay? So you're going to come up with the first step that your customer needs to take, and then you're going to keep asking, and then what? And then what? And then what? You're going to keep asking that, and then you're going to give yourselves the answers. And what that's going to do is it's going to clarify the onboarding process that your customer needs to take, and it's going to make it way more clear and break it down into small baby steps that's easy for them to take and make sense. So let's break this process down into some examples. So let's say you're a realtor, and for a customer to purchase a home from you, the very first step the client needs to take is that they need to sit down with you and have coffee. Okay? And during that meeting, you're going to talk through some of their needs. You're going to talk through some of their financial goals, what their income's at, what kind of home they're looking to buy, what part of town they want to live in. And you need to have just a good clarifying conversation on what their needs and goals are. And the best way to do that is to have coffee, to schedule a coffee with you, okay? So that's the first step that your customer needs to take in order to purchase a home with you as a realtor, is they need to go to your website and schedule a coffee for you to kind of work through those details. Okay, now we're going to go through this exercise and we're going to ask the question, and then what? Okay, so the first step is schedule coffee. The question is, and then what? So you're gonna answer, and then before we continue with the home buying process, they really need to get connected with my home loan officer and see what they can get approved for in terms of a home loan, because it doesn't make sense to start showing homes to them if they haven't been approved for a loan yet. So they really need to meet with my home loan officer to get approved first. That's going to be the next big step for them. And then that's the second step. And then what? You're going to ask that question, and then what? And the answer might be, well, then I need to start showing them homes. We'll meet at open houses or schedule private showings in the community. We're going to connect more and meet in different homes and see if they like it. And once you've established that step, then you're going to ask, and then what? Now, this can get kind of annoying over time if you're not used to doing this. It can feel annoying, but it is so important, guys. And honestly, it's one of the best exercises for really breaking down exactly what steps your customer needs to take in order to do business with you. So you are going to keep working through this exercise of asking, and then what? And then what? Until you've really broken down what the full onboarding process looks like, until you've drilled down so deep that you can't go any farther, right? You want to make it crystal clear for them. And I'll be honest with you guys, even for me in my coaching practice, this has been an interesting process to walk through. It's been an interesting process for me to break these steps down, because it gets me thinking creatively about exactly what my customers need in order to book a coaching session with me. And one of the things that I've had to come up with is, starting with the first step my customer absolutely needs to take. I start there. That's where I begin. And the first step to doing coaching with me in my business is they need to book a free strategy session with me. That's the first step that gets the ball rolling for coaching, because me and the client can't do anything. We can't work on any other business goals or, have a plan of action until we have that free strategy session to see where they're at and where they want to be, and just kind of, it's a good opportunity for us to get to know each other, see if we'd be a good fit to work with each other. So that's the first step. Now, if I break that down and I ask, and then what? Then the next step might be that we need to work through a business analysis together and to get a feel for what needs need to be worked on in the business. What are some areas of weakness they need to work on? What are some areas that are working really well that they need to reprioritize efforts and focus on those efforts or on those actions to help them get better results? Something like that. Okay, so maybe we do a business analysis together. And then what? And then again, I might answer, well, we need to talk about pricing options and choose the one that works best for them. That's great. Then what? And then the next step might be that I need to decide, with them together, what days and times we want to meet moving forward, and how we'll know when we've reached the success we need for the coaching to come to an end in a healthy way. Like we know that they've been successful in their goals and they no longer need coaching. So that was kind of the process that I walked through to help me really clarify what the coaching onboarding process is going to look like. And I've had to go through that whole scenario, go through the exercises. It was a little bit annoying, but it's super helpful. It was very worthwhile. Very glad I went through that process. Now, every business can and must walk through clarifying the buying process for their customers. Whether someone sells something as small as coffee or you're selling skyscrapers, you got to share the exact steps that your client should take if they want to purchase your product or service. There are always there's ways that you can streamline the buying process and make it easier for people to purchase online by showcasing those steps on your website. You're helping them get started online, whether they go to your your booking page on your website, or a call to action page, or a product page. If you have that visible on your website, if you make it possible for people to buy or book from you online, man, it's so much easier for them versus them having to email you to get the process started or give you a phone call. And by the way, guys, as I've coached businesses, this has come up so many times. I ask businesses at networking groups and people that I'm coaching, what needs to happen for your customer to start doing business with you? And more times than not, they say, well, they just need to email me and we'll go from there. Or they just need to pick up the phone, give me a call, and we'll go from there. You're making it hard for, first of all, that's not even on their website. Nowhere, it doesn't say, hey, email me and we'll get the ball rolling and we'll figure it out together. But you're making it really hard for people to get something initiated with you. Why not have a contact form? Why not have a calendar link? Why not have a booking page where they can choose a day and time that works for them, where they can sit down and talk with you? Or if you're selling products, why don't you have a online store, an e-commerce site where they can just buy it from you directly on the website without having to meet you somewhere in person and pay for it directly? That's just making it more convenient and easier for your customer. I personally recommend, if you do consulting and you need to have like a kind of that first appointment, kind of like what I do for my coaching business, if that needs to happen first as your first step, I recommend that you don't use a regular contact form that's only going to ask people's names and emails and phone numbers and ask them to explain what they're looking for. I would actually start with a calendar booking page. And I would look into Calendly. Calendly is great for that. Calendly will sync with your Google Calendar or any of your other calendars that you might use. So you can go in and you can block off time ahead of time, and then you have that Calendly link on your website, and the customer can choose which days and times are available for them. Now, the reason I say that is because this is going to allow your potential customer to lock in a day. Okay, it's gonna force them to lock in a day and time to meet with you versus having to fill out a form, wait for you to email them back, to where you're going to go back and forth with them to schedule something. And, it just wastes time if you email back and forth to schedule something. If you start with a Calendly form, you got them to lock in a date and time prior to you guys meeting. So having a calendar on your website, it just makes it easier for your customers to schedule that consultation with you. And here's the key, guys. The easier you make it for people to buy what you offer, the more you're going to see your consultations and your sales increase. Okay. Now here's the truth. All right. And we talked about this in our previous podcast, but customers will not purchase anything from anyone at any time, anywhere, for any reason if they feel confused. Customers want to feel empowered and educated. They want to feel like they're making the best choice. And if they try to go to the website and there's no clear way for them to schedule a consultation or to purchase your product, then they're going to get frustrated and they're going to move on to your competitor's site. So the goal here is to make the onboarding process as easy as possible for them. Regardless of whether you sell a product or a service, you got to find a way to communicate to your customer exactly what they need to do to get started with you. Okay, so clarifying this part of the buying process for your customer really is like creating a roadmap for them. It's giving them a GPS and saying, hey, if you want to arrive at your destination, here's the exact route that you need to follow. You don't want your offering to come off like a black box. A black box is where the customer has no idea what to expect. All they know is that something exists inside that box that's supposed to help them, but they have no clue how it's supposed to help them. And definitely, they don't have any idea what steps they should take to unlock the value inside that box. So your job is to take your offering out of the black box where people don't know what to do to purchase from you. And your job is to turn that into a clear roadmap where you walk alongside your customers and you guide them through the onboarding journey. Now, why is clarifying your offering so important? Why does it matter that we take the time to break down all these steps in our business and go through kind of the annoying process and exercise of making it clear to your customers? Because even though we know in our heads as business owners what the customer needs to do in order to purchase from us, even though it all makes sense to us, it doesn't make sense to our customers. Our customers don't know how to read your minds. No one does. So even though it all makes perfect sense in our brain, we need to make the extra effort to communicate that process clearly to our clients. And again, this is a mistake that a lot of businesses make. They don't take the time to walk their customers through the onboarding process, and because of that, they miss out on a lot of extra revenue and sales in their business. Now, when you start clarifying these important questions in your product or service, you're going to start connecting with your customers and helping them understand what it is that you do. You're going to build more credibility. You're going to build more trust with them, and people are going to see you as an authoritative brand in your profession. So that's the question that I call the process question, and it's simply, what is the process for someone buying what you offer, or how can they begin the onboarding process with you? So take some time this week to really clarify what steps go into the buying process. Start with the very first step your customer absolutely needs to take. Okay, the first most critical step that they can't do anything else until they take that one first step. And once you've defined what that first step is, then you're going to ask, and then what? Okay, and then you're going to keep going through that exercise and asking and answering, and then what, until you've broken down the onboarding process so clearly that no one could mistake what needs to be done to purchase your service or your product or book that consultation or appointment with you, okay? So take some time to go through that exercise this week, and I hope this podcast has been beneficial to you. If you have any questions about growing your business or clarifying your offering even more, let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. There are 5 key questions that we're answering in this particular series when it comes to clarifying your product or service. And this podcast covered the second question. But if you want to learn the other 3 questions and how to answer them to make your offering more appealing, we have those other 3 questions that we're going to be working on answering in future podcasts. We've got the first question in our previous week's podcast. You can visit that and listen to that one, but keep an eye out for the other ones. And here's the great thing. Once you clarify your offering, you're going to have messaging that you can start using everywhere. In your marketing campaigns, in your sales conversations, on your website, throughout your social media platforms. So there's a lot of value in building the foundation of your marketing and branding by just starting with a clear offering. One that's going to define exactly what you do and communicate, really powerfully to your customers. So I appreciate you guys listening to this podcast. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the show the next time.